You see? And then you could have this process going on in all of these different squares. Now, when it gets really interesting is when you take one of these squares here and you basically fractalize it like we have here. And then you say to yourself, okay, well, how best to efficiently use all of this land and have everything efficiently put together? And the answer for me, at least, this is what I thought. My answer was this. You could have a number of different places that are built as homes, but then at strategic locations within these 4-kilometer city blocks, you would have the fire station, the police station, and the hospital right at the center. That way it's virtually equidistant in one way or another, less than 3 miles away from the nearest home. Okay, you could also have things like, you know, auto dealerships, or you could have things like, you name it, auto repair or something like that, which we'll get to in just a little bit about the automotive industry and all that stuff, how that fits in. But you could also have other things like, you know, shopping centers and like flea markets and stuff like that, and large and tall buildings that are next to these locations, you see. And on the outskirts of the city, you could have things like the recycling center, the sewage and the water purification center. You could have the hazmat area. You could have multiple different areas for multiple different reasons. And you could isolate these things away from the people. And the whole idea is that if all of these people use these locations, if all of these homes are self-sufficient in and of themselves and are kind of like symbiotic with each other and the whole, then this whole city would essentially be an on-the-grid, off-the-grid city. A grid that was independent of in and of itself, but also interdependent. A city that is like laid out in a logical and efficient format. And there's all sorts of different things that you could do. You could layer these buildings with multiple different shops and different types of businesses and stuff like that, so that you're not spreading it out all over the city and having people drive everywhere. It's all like in one strategic location based off of the common traits that each and everyone has. And then in this way, these businesses could work together with one another, because all of these different businesses kind of do blend with each other. And if you need X, Y, or Z, all you need to do is go to one location. So the whole idea here is to have the whole city, have all the people, have all the businesses, have all of the socioeconomic structures working together symbiotically with each other. And because the basic fractal fundamental format for each of these independent and energy efficient homes and cities is fractal in nature, the environment will not be affected negatively by the presence of these cities. There will, and if we get into the way that the automotive industry is going to be transformed through these 0-point energy devices, through these Tesla coil technologies, et cetera, then we can really begin to grasp the level and the scale of the type of city that I'm talking about. So with that said, let's start by saying this. Or let's move on, shall we say, by saying this. Here at the center of this city, whether it be here in the center of this square or in other patterns, the whole idea is here at the center of this city will be a Tesla coil. This city will be built on a ley line, okay, or on crossing ley lines. And this Tesla coil will end up amplifying the electromagnetic pulse of the Earth itself and putting wireless, free, not harmful like ELFs are, energy in the air, in the atmosphere, in the Earth itself. And all you would need to do is have an antenna to tap into this infinite energy supply that is all around us all the time. So the circumference of this entire city would be surrounded and filled with an electromagnetic energy, an electromagnetic pulse that could power our devices, whether it be our homes or our vehicles. And if we get into the way that the electromagnetic ley lines of the earth, the electromagnetic lines that are on the earth and surround the earth, can actually be used to navigate the earth, that if you have the right type of vehicle with the right type of magnetism, you can essentially ride these ley lines, ride these electromagnetic lines like they're roads. And because they're electromagnetic, you can travel really fast because there's very little resistance, especially when you factor in things like anti-gravity or inertial propulsion. Then you can essentially circumnavigate the entire globe in the blink of an eye. And each of these independent cities could end up using this whole new type of energetic system to not only, power their cities, but also to travel. We're going to get into all the different applications here in a second. So you could have things like walkways and roads and stuff like that. I don't think that roads are going to necessarily be something that we use very much anymore, especially when we get into the right types of technology and how we can basically be symbiotic with the earth and don't need to travel on it, and have combustion engines and rubber tires and all that stuff. And we're going to end up replacing roads with things like walkways and stuff. But the idea is that we could easily lay out the city in a grid-like system because it's the most efficient way. And we can name each of these cities in these different main roads or walkways or whatever it is that we wanted, whether it be things after, Harriet Tubman, Dr. King, Jefferson, Franklin, Lincoln, Mother Mary, whatever. And if we number the avenues, then it becomes so much easier to navigate the city itself. The idea, the way Los Angeles is laid out with a bunch of curves and roundabouts and one-ways and all that, it is so inefficient. It is so inefficient. It doesn't make any sense. Now, imagine for a second that that city that I just showed you with this pattern here is one of these. And the idea here is that each and every one of these checker points, one of these like white spots, one of these white checkers here, is an ecosystem, is a natural ecosystem that is untouched, that is not disturbed. Remember, at the center of this city here is a Tesla coil, which means at the center of this city, there's a Tesla coil. At the center of this city, there's a Tesla coil. And each and every one of these cities would end up being interconnected through the electromagnetic pulse of the earth itself, and you'd be able to travel to these cities through this electromagnetic grid system that already exists in the earth. And each and every one of these cities could then be joined up by like a master Tesla coil at a larger electromagnetic ley line convergence in the ecosystem. I hope that this is beginning to make some sense. Now imagine as though as this city here thrives, as this eco-friendly independent city thrives, so too do the ecosystems next to them, especially when we get into the way that these cities are built, which we'll get into in just a second, okay? The whole idea here is that as these cities prosper, so too do the ecosystems that surround them. You see, and considering that all of these civilized areas are essentially surrounded by nature, if each and every one of them are working together symbiotically with that nature or with that natural world, then essentially everybody can live in harmony. And everybody would be surrounded by the beautiful natural world without needing to see a bunch of cities and stuff like that, without needing a bunch of smog in the air, et cetera, et cetera. Now, let's just get into this idea of water pipelines for a second, because this is really important, especially if we understand this whole idea of like the connects or the Lego metaphor that I gave you before, and the way that if we make certain things like our water pipelines or stuff like that either already installed in the home via 3D metal printing, or we make these pipes like Lego or Connect type sizes that are interchangeable. That way, in case something breaks or something like that, all you have to do is replace the one part as opposed to digging up the whole thing or whatever. the water systems and the waterways are actually a perfect example of the way that we can more efficiently build our cities and with less work.